Hi everyone. Hi Francis.
Hi, Colin.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for me around this topic of relationships is like I was thinking about how the idea is the meaning of it often that's used in the world. Like quite often we'll hear things like someone might say, "Oh, are you in a relationship?" Or when was your last relationship? Do you want to? Would you like to be in a relationship? These kind of questions, which I feel like they all the meaning given in these contexts is always like it's like maybe not necessarily spoken, but it has to do with are you with someone physically, intimately, sexually? These kind of implications are normally the way the world accepts the term relationships. And I enjoyed last night and this morning just doing a little bit of reading and getting a real like a very different interpretation from Jesus about relationships and what they are. And one section in particular that I was enjoyed reading again was in the teacher's manual, and he actually calls the third question in the teacher's manual, which he says something like, "What are the levels of teaching?" And it's like in this section, he's using relationships synonymously with the idea of teaching learning. It's like a whole different, and then he describes three main types. These fairly brief encounters, which you even might call like chance encounters, even though they're not necessarily chance, they're brief. And then these more sustained ones. And then he also mentions these relatively rare, like lifelong relationships. But the other thing, and this is probably where we're heading to, let's talk about this, is where he also says something like the goal in every one of these relationships is that they become holy. And I was like, wow, that's so cool to sort of have that in mind, that it's like the goal is not really about trying to like perpetuate things here, or it's like this goal of holiness. And I thought it might be a nice opening, just Francis, just talking about that theme.
Yeah, thank you,
And that
Colin. First
purpose.
of all, yeah, thank you for bringing this topic. I think it happened right after our New Year retreat, like the third day as we enter into the New Year. Colin sent me an email saying that can I do an interview with you around the topic of relationships, and it just feels really really good to explore it and approach it at different levels, and also involve everybody here to yeah, so that we can together really look at it from different facets and see what it is, and how we can use the relationships in our lives to truly achieve what we want. I think I think one thing that was like a little um, interaction that Colin and I had at the very beginning when were gonna when we're gonna decide on this topic was to look at what is the goal of a relationship. We were saying, do we use A Course in Miracles to improve our relationships, or the other way around? Do we use relationships to achieve the goal of A Course in Miracles? And I think once we get very clear, it's almost like look at the core of this issue with a laser, like immediately we zoom into the purpose, because I think we can talk about relationships, like you're saying, Colin, at the beginning, everybody has relationships, have relationship issues, and they can look back to the experiences and they can, you know, bring it into the future relationships that they're learning. But really underneath it is this very question: what is the purpose? Are we here, you know, in this talk or in general, using A Course in Miracles to improve our relationships, which means to improve something that that is based on body identity. And if that is the purpose, then I can guarantee you that the real question will never be asked and the real healing cannot be achieved. So we have to really flip it all the way. You know, we're here to achieve happiness. And happiness can only be achieved through wholeness. I think, Colin, you mentioned the word holiness. Holiness is to make whole. And only to make, when we make whole, we can experience holiness. Like there is no exception of anything anymore. There is no saying, I love this one, but I have a very different feeling towards others. So when Jesus talks about relationship, he keeps talking about holy instant, because in the holy instant, in that moment of forgiveness, in that moment of total remembrance of the spirit, then you actually experience there is no relationship with individuals, but actually there is a whole experience of wholeness. That's where holiness, you know, that is what holiness is equipped to. So really, in that word, in that sense, when we say we want to be happy, that means we have to make no exceptions with our relationships. Instead of looking at relationships with a magnifying glass to say, how do I improve this particular one? I have a real difficulty with this particular relationship. I have a good relationship with that one, so I'm good with that. But it's, you know, today I just feel like we want to flip it all upside down and just saying, you know, we're here to achieve happiness, and we have to see relationships as a way for us to achieve that. And also another thing that I know, that when we talk about relationship, we kind of define relationship, especially after we start to use the Course lingo. We start to talk about relationships as if some are holy relationships and some are special relationships. So it's like, okay, how to make my special relationship into holy relationships? Oh, this one is a holy relationship, that one is a special relationship. That is not the way Spirit looks at relationships. Why is that? I think Jesus actually says in A Course in Miracles, anytime you experience anger, you can guarantee that you have formed a special relationship that the ego has blessed, because anger is always based on guilt, and guilt is always comes from the ego. So, oh my God, if there is any moment that you experience anger, you have invited ego to bless this relationship. So what is the hope? Then people say, oh my God, there is no relationship in my life. I don't experience anger. But this is the difference, because Spirit doesn't look at relationship as this one. It looks at this moment. Anybody in this moment can relinquish the anger and make this a holy relationship. And holy relationship can only happen now. It can only happen in this moment. It's like saying forgiveness can only happen now. Spirit can only exist now. So holy relationship can only exist now. So that is hopeful, that is very hopeful. Really, it is to say that ego, anger, guilt exist in the past and in the future when you look at things through the timeline. But any given moment, you have the power to change the way you look at it. You can invite the spirit to look at it and make it holy in this moment. So it's like, when we talk about that, we can sort of let go of the way we even look at the relationship, loosen up a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, like, because I had that thought too when you were sharing. It's almost like, oh my God, how do I, like any anger? Because it does. I think if I'm honest, there isn't a single. There wouldn't be a single relationship. I don't know, the dog next door, the neighbor, the more sustained ones. The friendships. It's like there's little irritations that are bigger. So there's this thought of like, oh, it potentially or can be tempting to think this is a little bit overwhelming, but as you said, okay, so it's just like this moment. Like, I guess I feel what you're alluding to is this vigilance for like forgiveness, really, isn't it? It's like forgiving. Okay, well, I'm noticing this. We call it an attack thought or a judgment, but like there's an opportunity to use that. I don't need to do hypnotherapy and go back to past lives, or it's like, okay, what's right in front of me now? I can practice there.
Yes, and also earlier when you were saying spirit or Jesus equips relationships with teaching in the course, that is also very true, because we don't really look at our relationships as teaching opportunities, but that is truly what they are in essence. Every time we meet someone, we can step out of the way and let the spirit inside to relate through us to the brother. And in that way, you actually never really relate from the past. You don't bring the past into the present to say, this is who you are and this is who I am, and we relate in that level. But every single moment can be this standalone moment where you say that I'm stepping out of the way because I'm going to let you relate. And in that way, I'm going to let you teach me how to relate, how to form a holy relationship in this very moment. So in that way, it is a teaching experience. You teach through demonstration, but it's not you who is demonstrating. It's the spirit in you that is demonstrating by teaching. And its teaching is also healing. So teaching, healing, relating, for the spirit, it's the same, And then that is why when we talk about relationship, they are very much the same, with the different names that we give, the different kind of length and the different construct. In the end, to the spirit is the same, because it is used with the exact same purpose. When I call my mom, I need to step out of the way so that I can have a brand new way of relating to her. When I meet someone on the street, I need to step out of the way. I'm gonna have the spirit speak through. So in the way, you can see how to the spirit, every single encounter is as significant as this long-lasting relationship that you have day in and day out, because every moment to him is brand new. Every moment is, we just had Christmas, 3 weeks ago, and Christmas, it's a moment that we celebrate the birth of the Christ, and I think somewhere in the course, Jesus actually says, this Christmas, let me celebrate your birth. Like the real you.
Right.
So, but every single moment is nothing but that. It's a brand new moment to choose again, to let him be born through the relationship. And you can see how important a relationship is to the spirit, how important it is, because it is a moment to let him be born through you, to extend out to the seeming brother in front of you, so that you learn through the miracles that you witness.
It's beautiful. I was just thinking of there's an idea that's fostered quite a lot in, I think, different paths, and maybe a little bit more of a new age idea of, oh no, all you need to do is love yourself, just love yourself, and then you can. And I feel like in the Course, Jesus, he sort of feels like he's emphasizing more the relationships with our brothers, in that somewhere in that it's like there's so much gold in there. Like I can see there's so many reflections and triggers, and I feel in a way that Jesus is even maybe warning us a little bit, like not to, I think he even says somewhere, like if you try to find the voice for God by yourself, it's almost like he's saying it's not going to happen. You need to be really inclusive of, like you said, it was almost like the gold in every single, I love that. Just I feel like it's igniting something in me. This it's like the opportunity, the attitude, I suppose, of every encounter being the possibility of a miracle, of just an extension of some joy and some love. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, the thing is, I noticed that the ego has formed a concept of every single thing that, like, as a substitute or mark of what the truth and reality is. So the ego gives us a self-concept of a small self, and then saying, love yourself because you don't feel worthy. So the solution is to, I don't know, like state your position, feel worthy. But if you really look at it deeper, if the self you're talking about is referring to this separate self, really what you're trying to do is to say, let me love the separation. And it is impossible, because
Right.
it's guilt and hatred underneath it, and it's impossible to love that which you're not. So it's such an impossible goal. Just like ego invented so many pathways and saying, try this, if only you can do that, but it is impossible. And the spirit is saying, you can be happy if you just know who you are. But there is no separation. So I have to teach you by extending what, this idea to your brother. He actually says, the idea withheld is not gonna really bring any miracles to you. So even if you hear an idea, but you withhold it and not really apply it in your actual practice or extending it out, it just means that you still hold on to this idea of separation. I'm only this is my border of who I am, and you're outside. So it's the whole thing of extending to a brother is not a sacrifice. The ego is always want to make it a sacrifice. I'll extend to your brother, that's how you lose. That's a sacrifice. But it's the only way to see that there is no gap in between,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like, I think we can learn and be helped so much by some of the witnesses that we have. And I just, as you're talking, I actually started thinking of David Hoffmeister, and I think from the moment I met him and throughout the whole time that I've ever had anything to do with him. I've seen him online or been at retreats. It's like I feel he demonstrates this thing that you're saying of like, it doesn't matter who's asking a question, what's up, you know, he's 100%, the entire attention is on the one sharing. And you know, an example comes to mind with those movie nights where sometimes they're like 5 hours and it doesn't matter. It's like, it's this right in the moment where he's just sharing all this love. And I think it's felt so much, that demonstration, you see it and go, wow. Because sometimes I notice for myself, towards the end, I believe in these thoughts like, oh, I'm getting a bit tired, or I've had enough, you know, and sometimes I just think of, okay, let's just have a look at David and look what he's, and I know that can be a trap too sometimes, because it's not helpful to compare. And maybe you can just shed a bit of clarity on this, because the ego can come in and compare and say, well, I'm not as good. Look at me, I'm unworthy. I'm worth less than that or something. But also the spirit can use it, almost the contrast or the demonstration of this, you know, this attitude and this way of shining and sharing. Like, yeah, can you say something around that? Like,
yeah, I do feel that we all need examples, because really those words and concepts, metaphysics in the course can be learned by the ego, and then it forms its own definition and feed back to you. This is how, and I see over the years how many people come and point out they really don't know what to do, because this concept says this way, that concept said that way, and they almost like, how do I do this? You know, I don't really know. Just let things be exactly as they are, or should I speak up? What? And I think it is just helpful to see an actual demonstration in, at least in our lives, just to see how someone really, you know, walks through this world of time and space, and yet really have this unified purpose in mind, and how the spirit just absolutely use everything. Every time that we speak, every time we do anything, it always is it's an opportunity to extend the spirit. Really, it's not an opportunity to extend the ego. It's an opportunity to demonstrate the spirit inside of us with everything, every word. So yeah.
The other idea I've been hearing a couple of times, you know, in the last, you know, day or two, and also it's come into my mind a bit as we're talking, this idea of, I don't even know if this comes from the course. I think it does. Like the idea that the world is backwards and upside down. And a couple of the things I read just recently were pointing to a theme, like the idea of what is actually natural in truth has become unnatural in this world. And we've actually flipped it around, where, let's just say, take the idea of like a special relationship. It's almost like commonly held in the mind that it's natural, you know, that it's natural to have almost like an exclusive love for one, that where you share and you do things that are like just for this one, at, you know, almost like at the exclusion often of others. And yet, say someone that's maybe demonstrating, and I maybe in your response, if you could, I'd be interested to sort of hear about, yeah, some of the, you know, your relationship, the holy relationship that you're having, even, you know, like I know your connection, your partnership with JP, that's been over a number of years. And yet when you talked to me the other day about it, it's like, you said, that was so touching when you said, he's not mine, I've given him to, you know, it's like, he's the same as everyone else. And so it's like, it's almost this idea that this way has become, there's an idea that this way is actually unnatural, you know, it's like we've just flipped everything around. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I can still feel in my mind, there's still an idea of like, you know, I don't know how strong it is, but there's still sometimes these temptations to think, oh, it'd be nice to, have someone to wake up and cuddle and have someone special, this sort of thing. And yet when I actually, when I even feel into it somewhere, it's like, oh my God, like it's almost, I can feel that in the past, it's brought me quite a bit of suffering, um, angst, even jealousy, or these sort of intense feelings. And yet I can still feel there is there is like still an attraction to this way. So yeah, I know I've kind of covered a few different things, but
Yeah,
you've got some thoughts there. Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, I think it's nothing wrong to feel that we want connection, we want affection, uh, we want to have someone in our lives that we can feel, a deep connection with. I do want to point out that the exclusive exclusiveness that is connected with the special relationship and inclusiveness that is connected with the holiness are purely in mind. So we can't really look at a form to say that is a special relationship because it's an exclusive relationship. But truly, at the level of form, there is no judgment. We can't pick the specific situation and lay a judgment, say that is this. But it's all come back to the mind. So how does that feel to have inclusive relationship? Is, basically like David used that metaphor a few times in his talks. Sometimes he said it's like 52 cards, a deck of cards, and you really lay them all on the table and you say they're all for you to pick and choose. So I feel it really very much feel like that. All my relationships or all our relationships, we could just say spirit to spirit. I don't really feel I need to choose my life partner, romantic relationship partner, or the partner that I would collaborate in terms of work or doing your work. I don't have to pick the people in my life that I need to meet. I don't pick anybody, and you send them to me. So it's kind of lay it all on the spirit. And in the mind, there is such openness to say, anybody you send, I will not turn away. Anybody you send, I will not say, yes, this one, but not that one. It is a total openness and basically letting it all given and be coming back to me through the spirit. So it feels the same way to, for example, JP is in a intimate relationship with me right now for the past over 4 years. And before that, we were very close friends in the community. But none of that was picked by us through my preference. It was when I first arrived in the community, he was almost the only volunteer that was before me. So he was like someone I constantly asked questions with. And so we had this very deep talk throughout the years. But then when the relationship happened, it was very surprising to both of us. But it was almost like a activation, and we recognized that activation. Oh, this is something changed. The feeling has changed, and it happened at the exact same moment. Then we accept that, and yet at the same time, it feels to me that yes, it's all given by the spirit, and he is not mine, just like everybody else in my life, I can't say I own them. I want them to be there in this particular role for this period of time. Their role always seemed to be changing, their importance, or in terms of how much time I spend with them. And even this character, I have to say to the spirit, this one, I give it to you too, you know. Whatever she does, whatever she interacts with, it's, let me just purely focus on mind. And when I do that, I truly have the experience that the body is outside, meaning the body is not, it has nothing to do with what I'm really connected with, which is my mind. That I can choose happiness and call the spirit all the time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking, I wonder if you could share a bit about maybe just to help give some clarity and even contrast to, I was thinking, like, say, two of your long-term committed relationships, say, you know, your marriage, which I think may have kind of dissolved about 12 years ago or something, your marriage with Tim, and now your connection, your intimate connection with JP, like, would you be able to share a little bit of how you've noticed yourself, the what is different? What is different in yourself, in the dynamics, the attitude? Yeah, just because I know, I understand. I think that period was maybe even when you met Tim, because I think it's probably, there's a vast contrast, because I think that period was around sort of towards the end of your like atheist period, and you were maybe just coming into the course and opening to spirituality. So I'm sure there were a number of aspects that probably felt quite different to where things are at now, and how you are with JP and generally with other relationships. Does that question kind of make sense? Like,
yeah. Well, I think with my marriage at the time, what happened, it was in the middle of the marriage. We were married for 10 years, and I think around 5-year mark, in the middle of it, I experienced this sudden change. Suddenly my life goal changed, what I felt, my mission in life, everything changed. I recognized I was never happy. It's like a total wake-up call somehow, and I couldn't even recognize this person anymore. So it was extremely confusing for myself and all the people around me, my ex-husband included. So I think it was, yeah, very, very confusing for both of us, because I suddenly became a different person. I wanted different things, and all we could do to maintain that form of marriage was to kind of negotiate a middle ground. Like, for example, he wanted children, and I couldn't see myself having a life with children. And how could we bridge that? We couldn't. So we just talk about it and then push it into the future. Oh, okay, let's talk about it another time. It's just going nowhere. Okay, let's talk about it next time. So this is the only way we could move forward, was just to push things under the carpet into the future. And yet at the same time, you know, both of us knew that there is something, but neither had the courage to be able to call it or to say it. I think that was actually even before the course. So when the course came and everything unfolded to the end, it just gave me this self-knowledge in a way, what happened to me. I could with that awareness, I could actually be able to say, yes, this now is, this truly reflects what I want, and I have to go with that without lingering anymore, because it is really not loving. It is just compromise and sacrifice. And Jesus even said in the Course that sacrifice is really to make guilty. When I sacrifice myself to stay, it is really to make guilty, and to make guilty is actually direct attack. There is no love around sacrifice. So I would say that, yeah, maybe that is reflective of where I was at. Did not have any resource to know how to handle this difference in terms of what was guided when there was difference. But I guess right now, because it was a given relationship, I would say my marriage was also given at the time, and I feel immensely grateful for that. Actually, I have nothing bad to say about that marriage. It just took me as long as it took for me to really be able to see some ego patterns and to be able to take the steps. But right now, it is completely spirit given, and for both JP and I, we had the exact same goal, which is not the relationship itself, but our happiness. And so we also constantly remind each other, we don't want to change ourselves. We don't want to tiptoeing around, even though the longer you stay, you kind of know the little things that each other has, and you can easily adjust yourself to make sure the other person is happy, or
right.
But
you don't do that.
No, we want to make sure that there is no such agenda underneath to please for the sake of avoiding anything, and to know that the spirit is guiding it. And if we have any questions, any disagreement, all we need to do is just to hold hands and pray, and we always hear the spirit at the same time. So it becomes the most efficient problem-solving technique of all, not even problems, just questions we don't have an answer with. And another thing I do feel that is right now very present in the relationship is that both of us are entering this relationship forgiving, and it is such a very, very, very different experience, because there's this intense awareness that the way we use our words, we use our time together, is no different than when I use my words right now to teach my own mind the spirit's message. So we're there really just to, even when we interact as a couple, it is what that is for, and it feels really uplifting and gentle, and it feels just also the feeling is so applicable to every relationship we have, because we all have other collaborative relationships. Actually, the time I spend with him is probably not a lot throughout the day in terms of how much I spend time with other people in the community in collaboration, but the purpose underneath is the exact same. So the relationship with him is not a part. It's like now I can go to my little relationship with him and nagging and whining a bit. That's not gonna really teach myself or him who we are, and it's just weakening.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I want to just touch on something that you so beautiful, inspiring thing you shared with me when we spoke last, and you were just talking about like Tim, your ex-husband, and where his life's at now. And you were saying that I feel like what you were pointing to was this deep idea that when we if I'm really saying yes to the spirit and I'm following that, then like nobody misses out, no one loses. And you just touched on how Tim, like everything that he's wanting, he's his life is actually unfolding exactly like the children. So maybe you could you just sort of touch on that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He is happily married right now and have two kids, a girl and a boy. So he's so happy. He wanted to be a father all his life. That was his life goal, you know. So it's very good. And also, I just noticed, even though I also feel a very deep connection with him, but since I had this, I don't know what we call it, around age of 30, I just like suddenly became a different person in my priorities and my calling. I think it was very confusing for both of us, and a lot of friction happened. But after I took the step to leave, all the love came back to my heart, and I really thought it was really worth it if I can feel this much love for him. That's really all I wanted, you know, not body together and resentment held in mind, but if body apart actually means I will have um, never ending love for him, then that is what I want, and that's what I feel right now with him.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. Hmm. Yeah, I just when you were talking earlier, I just jotted down the word mother, and I feel like I just want to. What do I want to say? Like I can feel, say, my relationship with my mother. I'm in Mexico, and she's in Australia, so I haven't seen her for quite a while. I have calls now and then, and I can actually see and feel for myself. Time like I feel like there's definitely been healing that's occurring, and kind of even as I'm saying this, I'm getting like one of the points you made earlier was that our goal is not to try to make the relationship better, and I almost feel that like almost in my mind, is that something that I'm sort of thinking that somehow that reflection needs to look different. But I think where I'm heading is that if I'm really honest, I can still feel some like entanglement a little bit, some sense of like, oh, it's been, a month, I haven't talked to her, or it's her birthday. And, like I feel some sense sometimes of obligation, I really should call. And I don't know necessarily if I always like stop and just really ask. It's almost like maybe I'm a little bit afraid of the spirit saying, no, don't call me. It's like, no, I'm just going to ring. And occasionally it's a little bit awkward, it's like, oh, and they're usually the calls are not very long. Sometimes there's, some joy and whatever, but they're usually not very long calls. And I mean, I'm saying this, and I've got to say, I felt really inspired by some of the sharings you've done over the years around your mother. And one I remember in particular, which just blew my mind away, was I think you were sharing about a trip. You and David were in China, and you had a pretty full schedule. You had a lot of appointments and gatherings, and it was full. And your mother contacted you, said, "Okay, Francis, when are we going to meet?" And you end up saying, "Well, actually." You looked at your schedule. No, Mum, I don't actually have time to see you. And it was like, and you actually said something like that, like the depth of healing that had occurred. It was almost like your mother wasn't any different either. Her invitation was not something that you were putting above, anyone else. In fact, the prayer was like, okay, so how can I serve the whole? This is what I was feeling, was where you're coming from, it was very clear that there was a big calling from hundreds of people, I understand, from China, and that was your priority. And could you touch on this too? And really what we're talking, I mean, obviously this is like a theme. We're touching on like special relationship, guilt, this kind of thing, and somehow, yeah, like just how is that? This is just obviously been so washed and purified in your mind, where maybe you've stepped right out of that mother-daughter role. I don't know. Yeah, I'd love to hear what.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the end, we can say that the goal is to make the relationship better, but not in our own sense, because the relationship, if we define it as being between two people, and the relationship being better just means two people spending more time, that is not really the quality that the spirit is aiming for. The spirit is aiming for this never-ending love in our mind that we can really experience and radiate out to anybody we think and meet. So I feel like with my mother, it feels the same. When we went to China with so many people coming, I knew that if I truly felt inspired to meet her, there was nothing wrong to do that. But the fact was, I didn't feel inspired. And if I say yes, it was out of fear. It was out of guilt, daughter guilt of not being a good daughter. You don't even come back home anymore. Like now you fly half across the world to come home and you don't have time. So it was heavy, because these roles that I felt obligated to play, the roles that set by the ego, but clearly the spirit is loosening everybody in the roles so that we can really start to identify with something else, not to do with the body, identify with love, identify with light, identify with mind, So I think I just told her I didn't have time, and it didn't go very well, but it was truly reflective of what I really feel in my heart. I wanted to have time for those people who really want to know about the course. And then in the end, this hotel that we stayed was about an hour and a half from where my mom stays, because Beijing was a massive city. So she said, what if I travel to your hotel? Do you have just a lunch? You have to eat. So in the end, I said, okay, you can come. I have one lunch available. So she traveled a whole hour and a half to this part of the city, and we met for maybe an hour and 20 minutes, and then she traveled an hour and a half back. And then during the lunch, she actually write everything down in a sticky note, like everything she wanted to share. Your aunt did this. It was so interesting, because those things you can expand forever. But she was very, very efficient. Just wanted to make sure everything she wanted me to know. And also I was late because some other prior appointment got extended. So she was waiting for me for a long time in the hotel lobby. And then before I went down to meet her, I was like, this is not gonna go well, David. And then because in our hotel room, people gave us so many flowers. So David picked one flower, red rose, saying, give this to her. It's almost like the spirit is saying, so I went there almost like a date with a red rose in my hand. And my mom was furious at the hotel lobby. And then that was the first time we met, after years. So I just gave her a rose, just saying, this is for you. And she was not very happy. But years later, I went back to China. That piece of rose was still there. She dried it. She preserved it. It meant so much. Wow. So it was really interesting.
that's beautiful. Hmm. Yeah, I was just feeling to share something with you that I haven't talked to you about this, and or not the second part of it, but I was just thinking of just my connection with you, and over recent months there we've had a few calls, and there were a couple of like recorded interviews a few months back, and I remember having a call with you in sometime in October, and I was a little bit unclear about, it felt like where I was living in Ahihik, it was feeling like it was kind of done, and I didn't really know what the next thing was, and I was sort of exploring that with you a little bit, and I remember saying to you, it's kind of like, it was like probably a little bit of like this I know mind saying, because I was thinking of like, I had so many beautiful experiences at the co-living, throughout from when it began last year in April, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm going back there, but I said, look, there's one thing I know. I'm not going to sleep in the top bunk. No way. I'm not going to do it. And there's too many people. No, I don't want to, and I was like quite vocal, and you were just, you didn't try and teach me or judge me or anything. It was just like, and there was something that you said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember it was the next morning or the morning after I woke up, and it felt like this, this objection to that was completely gone, absolutely removed. And so I just naturally, made my way, and I spent November and most of December at living back in the co-living situation with quite a very vibrant group, a lot of Spanish, and where I was heading with this is there was like, this to me shows the almost like the magnitude of the plan that initially I'd sort of had this objection to kind of, being in a top bunk and, with sharing with two other men. And when I got there, like that wasn't really, it wasn't an issue. It in a way, it reminded me a little bit of like, I hadn't done that, I think, since I was like a teenager. But the interesting thing that came up after I'd been there a few days, it was like, oh my God, there was like somewhere like energetically, and there were certain patterns that were playing out. My two roommates, one of them was reflecting almost like patterns that I played out with my mother, and the other was reflecting patterns I played out with my father. I was in a top bunk bed sharing with mum and dad, and I was like, oh my God, I never could have planned, like, and in fact, if someone had told me that, I would have said, no, I'm not doing that, I'm not sharing a room. But it actually, later I thought, wow, what an amazing like healing opportunity. And there was occasionally, it was a little intense, but I guess I just wanted to kind of share that somehow this, sometimes when the spirit leads us in a direction, he'll just tell us as much as we need to know. Sometimes it can be a little bit frightening if we're kind of given all the information. But yeah, it was quite a cool thing to see that.
Yeah, you see, there is no accident, and there is no coincidence in in the people that you meet or spend time with.
Yeah,
it's just very orchestrated.
Yeah, no accidents, and also like almost like no need to try and dig from, some people might say, oh, my mother's passed, I need to try to, how can I forgive her? It's almost like, yeah, I don't know, this feeling like the reflections that will show up that will help me with my journey. I don't need to try to dig things out. It's like they're like the ones that are right there for me that are going to help me in this, help me through my whatever forgiveness lessons I have still. So yeah. Well, Francis, it's been beautiful. Like I was just wondering whether it might be a good time to check in with Susanna and see if we've got some questions from our audience.
Yeah, I think so. That's perfect timing.
Beautiful.